Welcome back, League fans. And before we get into the second game of our second series, we actually got a little bit of bonus coverage for you guys because game one between Team Gates and Delta Fox is still going on. So we're going to be jumping into the conclusion of game number one right now. So you don't even have to wait before we get into the
bonus coverage. Hey-o, everyone's favorite thing.
Yeah.
So just to give a little bit of a context for what happened to the game up until this point, up until about 27 minutes, Shinon had about a 30 CS lead on the Varus, and that left them able to get a ton of towers before Team Gates could really pick up their first. And then at around 28 minutes, basically, Team Gates starts getting a 2-for-0. They're trying to get back into the game, but they're unable to actually secure the Baron, and Delta Fox is able to clean up a lot of kills throughout the pit. And then Team Gates is basically only able to get one tower with that Baron buff, so it wasn't quite the cleanest Baron take. And that's basically, we're 38 minutes in now.
Yeah.
Different Baron buff for Team Gates now.
Just a little while ago, Delta Fox's Shinon tried to go for a Hero Flash Varus ultimate to really lock down a team fight, but his team wound up getting aced off of that, getting picked out of position. There's a Nautilus, a Rek'Sai, a Cassiopeia, and a Malzahar. So if you're flashing in as an AD carry and you're left unsafe, you're not going to have a lot of fun.
Yep, and now we see 38 minutes into the game, gold pretty close to even, 3K for Delta Fox, but at this point it's not the largest thing in the game, and both team comps pretty good scaling overall. Ezreal and Cassio, some of the best late game threats. Katarina actually is one if you're able to actually get into the fight and deal all that damage that you want to do, and Varus being that utility AD carry, though, he got chunked out instantly.
Yeah, and actually we see already the Stranglethorns having to go out here from Baby just to kind of disengage that fight. So we're already in like the later stages of this game and just kind of coming into absolutely everything. The Maokai at 0, 5, and 6 looks like he's had a little bit of a bad time in that matchup against the Nautilus, and now it's Team Gates looking to force this Elder Dragon. They don't have a lot of they don't have very many objectives on their own side. They only took one compared to the two that Delta Fox taken before. But the smite is there from Grigney. He's able to steal the Elder Dragon away, but he winds up going down. The Cassiopeia gets that kill. The Nautilus and the Maokai in the front line just trading blows. They're trying to get back onto Shinon, and Vex is actually going to clean up that kill. On the backside, Demonte's trying to get in for some Katarina damage. Maokai in the front line will shut down the Malzahar, and Demonte will also get the reset off of that. The Guardian Angel procs on Nautilus, and Katarina is still left in the back. She gets stunned up by the Nautilus. It's two tanks against damage dealers on the other side. The Katarina's trying to get the damage down. The Zanya's Hourglass goes out, but she's gonna fall to Vex. Ezreal going to get the cleanup on that. Maokai's actually gonna go over the back of the pit onto Vex. He winds up going down, and now it's supports, junglers, and tanks trading back and forth. Baby's going to wind up trying to clean things up. He has the Elder Dragon burn, but can he deal enough damage to the Nautilus?
He's the wrong way, no!
He has to flash away. The root goes out the wrong direction. Alorum is trying to run away with his life, and he's going to go down to the Dragon
Get to the Honey Fruit. He almost got there just in time to get the healing. Unable to do so. The burn from Leandries and the Baron buff, or Dragon buff being just enough. And now we see the Maokai looking to keep pushing down the mid lane.
Yeah, but that fight went on so long, Malzahar's back up already. So even though the team from Team Gates got aced in that one, a Maokai and a Zyra might not be able to get a lot out of this push. Maybe that inhibitor tower, maybe they can threaten the inhibitor with Cassio on the respawn. They just have to walk away.
That fight was insanity. It wasn't just the fact that it was late game and people stealing Elder Dragon and dying and tons of Guardian Angels going off, but also the angles that they were coming in. Katarina had flanked around the backside trying to get into the fight. The Malzahar realizes it, ults her to lock her down to stop her from getting in and following up with their tanks. And then after that, we see the Rek'Sai go over the wall, but come back in. It was pure madness.
I love bonus coverage.
Yeah, imagine if you had missed this, huh?
Exactly. So 18 kills to 17. Elder Dragon still left available on Maokai, still left available on Zyra. That fight seems like it went on for forever, but the buff is still there on at least those two members.
Yeah, whenever you have that Elder Dragon buff, tends to run out pretty quickly. So the fact that they're gonna hopefully be able to use it for a little bit longer is pretty nice.
But the key thing in this fight is all the Guardian Angels from both sides, except for potentially the Rek'Sai, who has just picked his up now, have gone down. So they're not going to be the tanks dying and then respawning. There's not going to be the Katarina. She does have a Guardian Angel picked up for herself on top of that Zanya's Hourglass. So now she's going to potentially have those quote-unquote 1.5 extra lives. But the fact of the matter is Katarina was on the backside of that fight for such a long time and not able to really get in to get those resets.
Right, if you just look at how Delta Fox wants to play their team comp out, they actually want to really lock someone down, insta-gib them. You want to start off with the Varus ult, followed by the Maokai, with Katarina and Kha'Zix insta-gibbing that person and starting to reset through the fight, where on the flip side, Team Gates has an extremely strong kite comp. Both Ezreal and Cassiopeia can do a ton of damage if left unchecked, so they want to hide behind their tanks in Nautilus and Rek'Sai, and hopefully having some lockdown by Malzahar to control these assassins that are coming at them. And overall, both teams are going to try and fight front to back, kind of, where Delta Fox really wants to get onto the back line, but Team Gates really wants to keep them in front of them.
We're pretty much at that point joining into this game this later on. We expect a fight like that to just absolutely end the game. Unfortunately for both of these sides, or fortunately for Team Gates and unfortunately for Delta Fox, considering the kinds of champions that were left available, it did not in the length of the fight in general. But now we can see Delta Fox, like you mentioned, they were the ones that want to kind of be the aggressor in this matchup. They have to eventually try to get some sort of pick off onto the opposing side of Team Gates. They still have about a 6,000 gold lead at this point in the game. It's not necessarily as much considering these basically full build champions at this point.
Right, and with the Baron respawning in the next 50 seconds, I expect to see both teams play this a little slower. No reason to force around random wards in the topside jungle. Hopefully they slow it down a little bit. Delta Fox does seem to have more map control overall. Look for them to get some more vision up in the topside jungle before trying to control that Baron buff and hopefully close the game out.
Yeah, if they're able to establish vision, they're going to be able to establish potentially a pick onto somebody or know that the coast is clear to be able to go for that Baron. None of the inhibitors are down on the map right now, so both of these teams are just going to be having that kind of back and forth kind of tug-of-war with where their minions are going to be pushing and pulling on the map. I wouldn't be surprised to see that vision war going down until somebody eventually pulls the trigger or catches somebody out of position because of that warning.
Exactly. Now, I mean, like we said, both teams do have teleport back into their advantage. It'll be interesting to see if Delta Fox bothers sending the Maokai down bot lane and trying to control around that bottom turret, which actually just dropped down. Just due to the minions. So
that's a tier 1 tower too.
Yeah, right? It's been alive for 43 minutes. That's a tough turret as we see Delta Fox start up on this Baron buff trying to burn it down.
They immediately start on it, and it seems like they're just trying to force this 50-50 situation, or at least bait in Team Gage. This is what they may want to do. Looks like they are going to wind up securing the Baron, but now the fight has started.
Ooh,
on the backside, Grigny's able to wind up melting down Vincent, and Strumpus goes down to Demonte at the same time. Now they're trying to chase down into Alorum as the rest of his team is left him for dead. He will wind up getting the dredge line onto the Katarina, but Shine on side to clean up the kill as Varus. The flash forward from Grigny and the odd R and just going to go down. It's a 4 for none.
And with that fight, it looks like Delta Fox will probably be able to close the game out this late in the game. Death timers are very long, and they have the Baron buff to help push this wave in. Looks like that's going to be game for Delta Fox if I'm have any idea what happens late game.
Yeah, I would have to say that at this point in the game, that's pretty much lights out for Team Gates. You mentioned that they were the ones that wanted to try to kite things out a little bit. You really can't go anywhere if you're being forced into the Baron pit. They chanced it with a 50-50 smite. Even if Delta Fox lost that one, they wanted that fight.
Yeah, and it was a really great team play by Grigny overall, both securing the Baron buff and then getting the insta-gib onto the Malzahar. And that's the kind of stuff you need to be able to do, get onto that backline and kill them right away. And off the back of that team fight, they're going to be able to close the game.
Yeah, so there it is. It's going to be game number 1 going in favor of Delta Fox. And we joined just at the right time for that.
Yeah, I don't know how the game was going before that, but it seemed like a pretty good game.
Yeah, it definitely did. So, oh man, that's one of those things where you just kind of like jump into the action. Like you're just kind of like spectating somebody that or like you just joined like an LCS broadcast. And you see that like all of a sudden you just jump right to the last Baron fight of the game. That's exactly where we were. And there were so many things being blown back and forth that I can't wait for game number 2.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we join in, it's 38 minutes, and then it's over at roughly 43. You get 5 minutes of action, just a lot of team fights is exactly what you want. You don't need to see the first 38 minutes, just see how it ends.
Well, I'm glad we got to see the end of that game. However, we still have to set up for game number 2. So let's take a moment now to establish who these guys are and where they actually come from, because that was just joining in the middle of the broadcast.
Right, Delta Fox joins NA as through the Challenger Series, through the actual qualifier tournament, and they're the sister team to Echo Fox. And like I said before, it's something I'm very happy about because you can no longer get into the promotion tournament if you have a sister team. So it just shows that the Echo Fox organization is committed to improving the Challenger scene overall, which is something that I think we're all happy about.
Yeah, we can actually see that because they've already put members from their main squad onto their Challenger roster as well to just help foster some of this talent. Baby and Grigny both spent time on the main Echo Fox roster in summer 2016, and now they're starting with Delta Fox.
Yeah, and they're also joined by Shinon, another player in the bot lane, who's obviously done very well. He was in the scouting grounds, and they're going to be going up against Vex, another player from the scouting grounds, who was, like I said before, Mr. Irrelevant, but ended up winning the entire thing. So overall, just a great series that we're getting to witness here, because it looks like they're pretty evenly matched already.
Yeah, and their opponents on the opposite side of the rift are Team Gates, created by popular streamer Trick2G. They're the only team in the Challenger Series, though, that's comprised entirely of rookies, but might not have looked like it that game.
Right, and Odd Orange is subbing in for Kitsuo. This is going to be his first competitive match ever. Well, series ever, as we already saw in game 1. Looked like he was doing pretty good on the Kazakhs. Funny story, I actually know about this kid just because Steve Aronset, Team Liquid's owner, used to duo with him all the time, and I bumped into him a couple times at the LCS. He's a really nice guy overall. Alorum is another player who's always been on the cusp of the Challenger Series and breaking in, but this will be his first ever appearance in a non-qualifier match, so they almost got there a number of times. Probably pretty happy to finally be playing in it.
Yeah, well, that non-qualifier clause is very important distinction because Alorum actually has a connection with Delta Fox that he shared with us.
Well, fun fact, I actually won the open qualifier with Delta Fox. I was on Delta Fox during the open qualifier, and then they put in Brandini instead of me, so I went to Team Gates. I've been playing against Brandini for a very long time. He's definitely a good top laner after coming back from Korea, and when he was on Phoenix 1, he has improved a ton, and he's looking really good, so I'm looking forward to playing against him.
Pretty interesting to see that kind of grudge match already. The fact that this guy basically took your spot from the team that you helped get in. I'm going to be interested to see. I'm going to keep an extra close eye on in game 2 now. Just going to see, hopefully we get to see some crazy counter picks the way we saw in the first series where there's a lot of action around the top lane. Looking forward to seeing something like that again.
Well, it's seen from the end of game number 1 that Brandini was not having the most fun in that top lane matchup. But now as we prepare for Champion Select, let's check out the starting lineups as a whole, starting on the blue side with Team Gates. Top lane, we just heard from Alorum. In the jungle, this time around, it's the odd orange. Mid lane is Strumpus. Bot lane is Vex, and his support, Vincent.
Right, and over on the other side of the rift, it's the red side. Delta Fox, top is Brandini, jungle is Grigne, mid is Demonte, bot Shinon, and the support, Baby, coming in from the LCS.
Yeah, so we've both already got a little bit of a taste of what these two teams could do because we got bonus coverage from game number 1. But now as we're heading into Champion Select for game number 2, I guess we have a little bit of a better picture because we are able to see that a couple notable power picks or powerful counter pickups actually wind up getting through that Champion Select stage, like the Katarina.
Right, the Kazakhs being another one we had seen in the first series, just how impactful it can be. It looked like it was pretty impactful in this game as well. We didn't get to see the early game to know exactly what it was doing throughout the that whole game, but at the very end, it helped win the last 2 team fights pretty handily, as well as the Katarina being another one of those reset assassins. It'll be interesting to see if they go for that kind of comp again. Now that they're on the red side, are they able to grab that exact same stuff? Because like we said before, it's really the blue side that controls what is available to you. Red side is forced onto those OP bans more or less. So if you want to see a ton of control mages banned and more assassins in the mid lane, that's up to you on the blue side.
And some of those utility 80 carry picks may have been banned out. In game number 1, we saw the matchup was a Varus versus Ezreal, which is completely different from the Varus Ashe that we saw in the first series. And there were no 80 carry bans in that one, unless you technically count the Misfortune support as an 80 carry ban, but
usually not.
No.
And generally, whenever you do see these kind of mismatched 80 carries where you have one of the utilities between Jhin, Ashe, and Varus versus one that isn't, it's usually because the champ pool got pinched during that second ban phase. And without being able to know exactly what happened as we did join halfway through, I think it's a pretty safe bet that they did try and secure an advantage in the bot lane.
Everything else was pretty straightforward picks, so I'm kind of excited to see what we're going to wind up seeing. I don't know in this matchup if we're going to see the kind of surprise Quas picks that we saw from game number.
Yeah, there's not too many Quas-esque players. That really is what makes him so unique, is the fact that the scene isn't flooded with him.
So we'll have to see what these two players actually what these two teams actually wind up prioritizing. And as we were going through our small little recap that we were given in game number 1, it seemed like Delta Fox was able to jump out to a lot of early game advantages. They had powerful laning pickups. Maokai's really hard to bully out of lane. He's easy to gank for. They had the Varus and the Zyra on the bottom lane, which is just a very potent duo kind of combination. Then the only real lane that looked like it may have struggled early on was the Katarina.
Right, and I think it's the kind of thing where you can say probably comes from the LCS experience that a lot of the members of Delta Fox are bringing, having been in the org for a long time as well. There's probably a good amount of carryover from the LCS roster down to this Challenger one. It's pretty known that they do scrim each other a little bit, so you can always learn from the LCS team as well what's working for them, what's not working for them. Having those extra people to talk to does help you get a better grasp on the meta.
And that's got to be really a big thing for some of these guys that are coming in from the scouting runs. 2 of them from Team Gates, although they may not have the same experience Delta Fox has had with Vex and Strumpus, but Shinon also coming in. He was on Team Mountain. Unfortunately, Team Mountain went 0-6, but he's already got his first win in the Challenger Series here.
I mean, it's probably a more important place to win in a lot of people's minds.
Maybe.
Yeah, the prestigious scouting grounds.
Listen, man, sometimes people involved in the scouting grounds put a lot of heart and soul into that.
I mean, the people involved did care a lot, and I know like the coaching staffs were pretty invested. They were getting pretty hypey whenever they were winning, so overall a great event as we see the bans start coming in. And Team Gates surprisingly banning LeBlanc on the blue side, basically saying, yep, we don't play this.
Yeah, that's actually kind of an important distinction to make too, because that means that Delta Fox kind of frees up an extra ban in their first 3 ban phase here. They are going to wind up using that potentially on the Rise here. The Camille still left open. Wouldn't be surprised to see that taken away, though.
Yeah, most likely the last OP ban, and it's going to be interesting to see what Team Gates tries to do here. They can try to maybe set up one of those jungle situations where you see the Kazakhs first pick, very impactful in game 1. Need to see what they want to do with that, because if they want to ban it here, nope, they banned the Camille as well. So it seems like Team Gates doesn't play too many of the OP picks, and they don't want to risk Delta Fox leaving all those up and getting one of these situations where it's like, oh, we don't play it, and now we have to pick it, or we give it away. So they're banning very, very defensively.
Yeah, and then that means that Delta Fox is able to really wind up targeting down a couple of champions to the Rise. Very powerful pickup at the Syndra that we did see slip through picks and bans in both times in match number 1 is going to be pinched away from Strumpist here, so that continues to just kind of narrow down that champion pool early on.
Yeah, and they're hovering the Wukong. I'm going to go with that's not going to be the pick. It is the Kazakhs.
Well, I'm used to play a lot of Wukong, but this ain't solo queue anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not. The Kazakhs is a much better champion. Looking forward to see what it can do again. It's been picked all 4 games so far. Seems to have had pretty high impact in at least the 3 we've seen.
Definitely, and the Odd Orange is going to be no stranger to that one. Although he hasn't had a lot of NACS experience, you do wind up seeing him around the high echelons of Challenger and Master Tier solo queue. Very adept at playing something like the Kazakhs. We saw be a very powerful pickup in match number 1 for Gilius. Took it 2 times in a row, was able to do a lot of nasty things with that. But that also means that Delta Fox is able to take a very nasty bottom lane combination. It's been around for a while. It's Ashe and Zyra.
Ashe Zyra was kind of the OP bot lane in the meta of Season 3. Somehow gone full circle. Season 7's back around. Still extremely strong. Level 6 power spike's crazy. If you get hit by the Ashe arrow, Zyra's going to bring in a ton of damage, clean you up. And overall, it's just a really strong lane, though. What's interesting is with the MF ban by Team Gates, the fact that they've basically banned out to the counter for the other team to be able to free to first pick it.
Yeah, they are hovering over the Malzahar pickup, which may be what they wind up locking in this case. It's not necessarily as powerful as a direct lane counter to the Zyra, but it still has that potential to be a very powerful level 6 addition to a team, and they've actually paired it with the Maokai as well, so there is a lot of lockdown potential from Team Gates.
Right, you might be seeing one of these team comps that we saw in game 1 of the first series, where you're looking for a lot of point and click CC, a lot of ways to start the fight 4v5 by just instigating anyone who's slightly out of position. I can understand, you know, wanting to make sure that you get the Malzahar so that you can set that up. It's much more of a comp pick than a direct lane counter, like you were saying. On the other side, we see the Corki picked to round out the mid lane for Delta Fox. Once again, showing pretty high priority in the Challenger series, which is once again kind of interesting, but there are a lot of mid lane control bans, so it's not totally out there, though I'll be interested to see if there's any kind of assassin counter pick against it.
Yeah, also, now that we've entered the second ban phase, by picking their mid laner in the last pick of the first phase, Delta Fox is now free to continue to pinch that mid lane champion pool. Team Gates did not prioritize it in their first rotation of picks. The Syndra, the Rise, the LeBlanc are all banned out. I wouldn't be surprised to potentially see another mid lane ban here and really put the pressure down on Strumpist.
Right, and of course on the flip side, you see that Team Gates is targeting the junglers. It's really not worth it to target the top laners. There's usually too many options available, so of the 2 mismatch positions that they have, they are focusing more on the jungle with the Rek'Sai ban. It'll be interesting to see if they go with the Lee Sin. We heard during the interview with Gilius saying that Lee Sin used to be a great pick into it when you're able to scout him out using your Tempest, but without that, it's not nearly as strong of a pick, and you often just get destroyed. He even went as far as to say there's no real counter to Kazakhs right now.
Well, we'll have to see what the jungle pick is going to be. The Rek'Sai has been banned out, but that also means that with Delta Fox left their last ban, wind up going for the Varus, so continuing to pinch that pool. And there is the Lee Sin ban, so now we have to see that second tier of junglers. Some of those have already been banned out. There's not a lot left open. We saw a Vi in the first series of the day kind of be picked open when some of those jungle picks were pinched out. We'll see if it's in Gridney's pool.
Right, and I think it's interesting to see just the Varus ban come through here on Delta Fox. That shows that they have some kind of knowledge on Vex that he doesn't like playing Jhin, and you really only need to bother banning one of the 2 utility AD carries. And we'll see if that's enough. Maybe he doesn't actually play that and he's not going to take the Jhin. He's going to go back to Ezreal or something. Be interesting to see exactly what they do as we see the Shen locked in for Delta Fox. Another champion that's not great in lane, but does bring a lot of unique utility to his team with the fact that he has a global defensive ultimate. It's going to be interesting to see if Delta Fox is able to use that to get a lot of plays off.
A massive split push threat as well, although he may not stack up very well in the lane phase against Maokai, as you mentioned. Later out the game goes, the more and more of a threat he's eventually going to be, the more and more you're going to eventually have to deal with him.
Yeah, and he does have a decent laning phase versus a lot of the tanks. His Q, if you get the pull through on them, actually does do a lot of damage with his empowered auto attacks, doing, I believe, 8% max health or something like that. So it ends up being quite a bit of damage over those 3 auto attacks, but it is not, doesn't have quite the wave manipulation the way that a lot of the other top tier tanks do, who can push the wave if they really need to, where Shen is basically stuck with single target, even once he has this Bomby Cinder not being able to do too much.
Oh, and it looks like that the Shurima pairing is going to be picked up at the bottom.
What year is it, huh?
Apparently last year.
I thought it was 2017.
No, I think this might be Worlds 2016 or just a little bit before that, because Azir has been locked in for the side of Team Gates and the Sivir. There's a lot of I just want to go in on their side.
Right, I mean, they round out their team comp with a lot of team fighting. We said they could potentially look more for a pick style. The fact that you see the Sivir come in, that does help with the pick, but the Azir is much, much more focused on team fighting, so it looks like they're going to be more focused on that than trying to split people up and start off with just an insta-give. On the flip side, we see the last pick of Elise. Not too much of a surprise. That's one of the last things left available. The only other thing really being the Graves that's top tier, and obviously they chose to go with the Elise here.
Well, the Elise was banned away from, I believe it was Sentinel in the first series between E United and I'm drawing a blank on Tempo Storm.
Yeah, Tempo Storm.
Yeah, see, I just corrected it myself there. But the Elise was banned away from them, so Grigny may have some prowess on this pick, although the champion pool was extremely pinched out. But like you said, a lot of potential pick-off coming out from Delta Fox's side, whereas Team Gates, they're kind of looking to be like, well, last game we had the kite composition, it didn't work out. Let's hit our buttons and run at you.
Yeah, and the Elise pick, even though he is forced onto it, basically Elise has been a meta jungler since her release, so I think everyone's pretty comfortable on the champion. The only problem is her power level isn't quite what we're used to seeing out of her. So I'm sure Grigny will have the mechanics to play it well, but the question is, can it keep up with the Kha'Zix, who is known to kind of take over the game if you're not being careful around it.
Yeah, it's also going to be very interesting. We saw the Kha'Zix in the first series have a lot of synergy with the mid laner. Of course, that was Gilius and Fox. Now we'll see if it's going to be the Odd Orange is a substitute on this team. He's not their starting jungler. Kitsuo is not, unfortunately, unable to play today. So we'll have to see if the Odd Orange and Strumpus are going to be able to pull this off. After Strumpus' champion pool had been pinched to the point where now he's playing the Azir.
Right, and on the flip side, I think an important thing to look at is the bot lane, where we see the Sivir coming in, which is something that is not being played very much overall. And especially in Tavares, I actually think it makes a little bit of sense because the biggest threat to you is the charge up of his Q, and that's pretty telegraphed. So you can get your spell shield up in time, negate that damage. It's still probably pretty hard just because of the range disadvantage that Sivir has, but she should have the push. So there's a lot of factors to take into account when you're looking at the bot lane as well as the support matchup.
And you have the spell shield on Sivir, but of course there's so many things coming out from the side of Delta Fox that you spell shield one of them, that means that there's, a Zyra root or a Shen taunt or an Elise cocoon that can still lock you down. And not to mention the fact that in this matchup herself, Sivir's not the longest range AD carry.
Right, and of course the fact that you're against a Zyra, one of the most punishing supports available for short-range AD carries. It's very, very brutal, but we do see Team Gates going with the cheesy bot lane play.
They heard us. 5 people in the bot lane, Brush. We talked about this in Game 1. None of that was happening between Tempo Storm and E United, but it looks like Team Gates might be laying a trap for Delta Fox.
Yeah, Delta Fox looks like they're trying to play it pretty safe, though, hanging out in the back part of that brush.
Oh.
Ash spots him out, runs away. Cheese thwarted.
Unfortunate for the side of Team Gates, but that's very smart for the side of Delta Fox. We have seen players just sit in that brush, stand a little bit too far forward, and when you wind up having like a Maokai, you wind up having, just anybody that can just point and click CC you at that point, summoner spells, if not a life loss at that point.
Shen's going to take advantage of the fact that he saw everyone on the bot side of the map invade up on the top side, get a deep ward in, see where the jungle of Team Gates will be starting. Odd Orange looks like it's going to be around the bot side of the map based off where he's hovering right now. Though, sure, his team's moving up to join him on the red buff.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what happens in the early game of this matchup, because the first one, it was extremely slow to start. Both the junglers were really set on power leveling until they about hit level 6. Elise doesn't necessarily have to do that. Like, we had a Vi, we had the Kha'Zix, we had the Rek'Sai in the previous matchups. Elise is definitely a lot more potent at ganking early on because she brings her own CC to the fight.
And we do see that Team Gates actually does start on the top side of the map. That's going to be seen by Delta Fox. Team Gates should know that Delta Fox started on the top side as well, given the fact that Zyra and Ashe were in lane right away. Probably not too much information warfare to be gained there.
Nope. So not a lot of sneakiness coming out from either of these level 1s. Even the little 5-man brush cheese was sniffed out by Shinon, and just one flurry of a volley coming out from Ashe. So this top lane match between Alorm and Brandini, the replacer versus the replacee. We joined in late last game, but it did seem that Brandini was getting the short end of the stick in the Maokai versus Nautilus matchup.
Yeah, and once again, we're in a couple tank matchups here with Maokai versus Shen. Not the best if you're trying to get your revenge. not going to get too many solo kills, too much pressure, mostly being about team plays. Though
Listen, I know a very specific pair of top laners that in the NALCS went off on MarkZ.
I mean, that's not to say MarkZ can't take over a game, but it's not usually due to the 1v1 laning.
That's right. I guess potentially not a Someday level or a Lorlo level MarkZ, but Alorum himself, as he mentioned before, he's played against Brandini a lot in solo queue, and although Brandini had gone to Korea with a Phoenix 1, he's gotten some experience over there, played on, you know, the Korean solo queue ladders, always touted as like this kind of proving ground for these players, like a hyperbolic time chamber almost, to steal your favorite kind of comparison.
Is that my favorite? I don't think that's on record anywhere.
I think I've heard it at least twice from you, so.
Probably only once on air. I hope I haven't repeated myself yet. It's only been a week or something.
But knowing that it's the kind of just the back and forth between this match gives a little bit of added push to just kind of tanks slapping each other.
Yeah, and we see, you know, kind of surprisingly that Alorum has basically let him get the push, hasn't focused on it too much. Looks like he was trying to set up a gank with his jungler here, and Shen has taken the bait, taunting in.
Yeah, so Brandini actually pushing it extremely far, but there is an odd orange behind him, and he does not have a lot of energy left on him, so it looks like he's going to try to go for a trade. He's going to have to flash forward. A twisted advantage from Alorum. He trades back, does force the flash out of MarkZ, but now stuck on the enemy side of the map. That's first blood.
That's a scrappy situation where the fact that he chose to run through the turret, picked up turret aggro, started dropping low, but then Alorum almost got killed himself trying to, you know, lock him down under the turret. So very, very close call. A lot of summoners burned, but ultimately the first blood going on to the Kazakhs. And being one of the strongest junglers available right now, getting first blood is extremely important, though Alorum might have overstayed his welcome a little bit there.
Ooh, Grigney knows that there's no flash on him there either, so he just comes up and does janitor duty.
It's one of those things where you get the kill, you think, great, I'll push my wave in, I'll get the advantage, it'll bounce back to me, this is perfect, and the other jungler's just hanging out there making sure you can't do that, punishing that. A little bit of greed.
No, unfortunately for the MarkZ, there was a Elise coming up the river and just wound up capping him on that one. So the teleport has been burned though from Shen to get back to lane. The wave was pushing against him, so we'll have to keep track on how this kind of influences the lane matchup. Although Shen doesn't have the kill, MarkZ got the assist. We'll just kind of see how that goes back and forth. But down on the bottom here, Shinon trying to clear out a ward, but he gets jumped on by Kazakhs. He is going to be able to stay alive, has to burn his flash.
It's not what you want to see, just trying to clear out a ward, being all safe, but use about 80% of your health bar for it.
See, the worst part about that was I was about to say that this matchup between Shinon and Vex, throwing back to their scouting rounds days, these two have played against each other in that scenario. They played against each other, no doubt, in solo queue or throughout the course of the other challenger squads that they have participated on. But this matchup specifically, game number one, we were notified that Shinon had about a 30 CS advantage coming out of the laning phase against Vex. And then a disadvantageous matchup here where Sivers just does not have the same range as Ashe. I want to see what Shinon's going to be able to do now that he has the Enchanted Crystal Arrow.
Yeah, and it is kind of unfortunate because as we see another gank coming in the top side, Flash Cocoon connects onto Alorum. He's going to drop down.
Ooh, this is a lot more exciting than the game we had previously between EU United and Tempo Storm. There's 3 kills already at the 5.5 minute mark. There's a lot of action centered around what we thought was going to be a rather dull top lane matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was wrong. They really do want to kind of push each other around. Just touching back on the bot lane, the Ashe ideally there wants to stay in lane until he can get that BF sword and start getting an advantage on Sivir, who, assuming you play the lane fairly aggressively, will be down CS, unable to match that BF sword purchase. The fact that Odd Orange is able to show up there, force the flash out, and the reset means Ashe only picks up the Caulfield's hammer, which Sivir is, you know, pretty happy playing a lower AD, don't take as much damage when we trade kind of matchup. You're more looking to hang on to this lane right now, and maybe at 6 start chasing them down, but even then it's tough given how strong the Ashe Zyra lane is.
Yeah, and of course the Zyra is going to kind of dissuade any sort of chase situation just naturally. She's a champion that has ridiculous peel as well as ridiculous dive prevention, but she also has some pick potential if she's going to be joining up with Demonte as they just kind of put a little pressure on the Odd Orange, get some information as to where Kazakhs is.
Yep, and that's going to give the top side of the map knowledge about the fact that he's no longer in danger. He can push that wave into the MarkZ and get his reset off. Always useful to know that. We saw just before that, Alorum didn't know where Elise was and got punished for trying to get the wave in.
Exactly. So now with a little bit more information, we'll see if these teams both try to settle down. Both of them a little bit more focused on getting some vision down on the bottom side of the map. We talked about potentially the focus because of the AD carry and support matchup, but of course it's also where the Drake is located, and with the Infernal Drake spawning, that is going to be something that both of these teams may want to take a little bit earlier than normal.
And especially on the side of Delta Fox, they have a lot of tools for taking the Drake early, as we see some pretty heavy trading on the bot side here. Both the teams do have, you know, kind of these almost token minions, to borrow a term from card games, the fact that you have the plants and the spiderlings from Zyra and Elise means that you are extremely proficient at tanking the dragon, which is really useful for trying to sneak it early. So I'll be interested to see if Delta Fox goes for something like that. And of course, Team Gates is going to want to stop that from happening, because given it's an Infernal Drake, and almost everyone on the side of Delta Fox is going to use that pretty well.
Well, if there's anything I've learned from card games, if you leave those token minions unchecked, they start to stack up and really cause a problem. So whether it's around a dragon fight and they take the objective, or whether it's around the dragon fight and you're just not really keeping your eyes on them, it's going to be a very dangerous area to walk into, especially if you have the Zyra at level. Once she hits level 6, the Stranglethorns make those stronger, and of course you get caught in that, well, kind of just die.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. We got a lot of them, huh? Maokai's got his saplings, got his ear soldiers. You got the voidlings coming out of Malzahar.
Spiderlings.
Flood the board!
We got so many different things that could potentially flood the Rift, although after a lot of action in the early stages of the game, we've gone relatively quiet for the rest of the previous couple of 3 minutes or so. We have seen that this top lane matchup, the two kind of tanks are starting to stack up some resistances. Shen's already picked up his Spectral Cow. Maokai's gone for the double Dorans. He's picked up a Null Magic Mantle for himself. But now that Corki's got the package, we'll see if any sort of rotational plays come out from Delta Fox, with, of course, the ability to go really, really fast across the map.
Yeah, it's got about 1,000 gold leads so far on the side of Delta Fox. It's one of those situations where after the kind of really fast kills in the early game, everyone kind of takes a step back and says, whoa, we don't really want to keep playing at this pace. Let's slow it down, especially around the top side of the map as the tanks keep getting tankier. And like we said, the dragon becomes a threat. It's hard to keep forcing around that top side without giving up something on the bot side.
Well, if we're looking at what these two teams kind of want to accomplish out of those team compositions, we mentioned Corki has a lot of poke potential. The Ashe has a lot of pick potential. The Zyra can also help do those kinds of things. They're able to force Team Gates into certain areas, so they're able to really make some of these plays off of poking somebody down and then engaging. They're able to force them into these Dragon Pit areas, which Team Gates is not looking to even bother contesting this one. That's where their team really wants to do things. What is Team Gates going to try to do with this Sivir and the Maokai pickup?
I mean, that was actually a really smart play by Team Delta Fox. They have a deep ward in the topside jungle that had seen Kha'Zix up there handing off, I believe, the blue buff to Azir. So that's kind of an old play that whenever the blue side team goes to their first handoff, you actually go to the dragon and take that. And you see just how easy that was to do for them, given that we were talking about how many things they have to tank it. They can stay on the map and keep getting things. So a really smart play by Delta Fox and gives them an early advantage here on top of the goal lead they already have.
Yeah, that's a lot of vision actually from Delta Fox, but they can't hide their vision from our observer team.
That would be kind of scary if they could. I'm glad they can't.
I'm glad they can't either. But that means that the Infernal Dragon has gone over to the side of Delta Fox. They've started to stack up some of the extra damage early on. You did mention that Ashe wanting to really get that VS sword on her first back has been able to still kind of push back to Sivir, but Sivir is kind of just keeping back and forth with the CS lead. Shynon, no 30 CS advantages in this game because of that pressure from Kha'Zix. He has gone back, picked up his VS sword a little bit earlier than Sivir has been able to, but the gold, or actually the CS counts here, relatively close.
Yeah, and it's definitely the kind of thing that you're very happy to see with Team Gates. Whenever you take that Sivir, you're basically hoping that nothing goes wrong in the bot lane, because it's something that can get very bad very quickly. And given that there was so much action around the top side, you're probably actually happy to see that, even though it hasn't gone exactly in their favor.
Well, you mentioned action around the top side, so it looks like Team Gates is going to give you some here as the flash forward down onto Brandini, and Odd Orange is going to wind up picking up a kill for himself.
Yeah, with the dragon down, there's no downside to heading up to the top side of the map, so they're able to pick up a kill pretty freely. That's one of the great things about having a tank on the top side of the map with a damage-based jungler, is that you can basically get that set up whenever you want that. Maokai root's basically always going to be in range, and they're able to pick up a kill, though Delta Fox tries to answer with some pressure down the bot side, getting that turret pretty low.
They gotta, if they want to go for this, they're gonna have to try to get the race on quick with those ricochets from Sivir, the Azir Sand Soldiers. They're gonna want to clearing that one out. So Demonte is gonna try to come up here and see if he can provide a little bit of wave clear reprisal for his own top tower. Looks like all the minions have kind of fallen down, but there's a Valkyrie forward. Shen's actually respawned here, so the Stand United goes through. He misses the taunt onto Alorum though. Quick twisted advance, is it gonna be enough to keep him alive? Corki Rocket does wind up getting blocked out, and Shen actually walks into tower range, and Auto Orange picks up another kill.
Yeah, he ends up being isolated as well versus the Kha'Zix, and that's one of the worst things you can do, despite the fact that that looked like a great play for Delta Fox. A slight overextension under the turret leads to another kill for them. Ends up 3-2 overall, and the bot side of the map is still under pressure, given that they see both members on the top side. Don't have to worry about a TP or anything anymore.
Yeah, well, the TP is actually going to be going up to the top side again, because now Maokai's been able to recall. They realize that Corki's a little bit pushed up here, trying to push towards that tower. Kha'Zix jumps in, forces the flash away from Demonte.
Come on, where was a follow under turret? Delta Fox did it a second ago.
Well, it didn't work out to them.
They're getting one up in aggression.
Oh, they may be appealing a little bit.
Maybe not in brains, definitely in aggression.
It may be a little bit too aggressive as they are slowly but surely going to whittle away this bottom tower, trying to give all 650 gold over to Shinon down there.
It's pretty nice to be able to get that as the Ashe, though. The part of the game where you're going to snowball the hardest with extra gold is kind of gone. Once that turret drops, you're not going to see the Ashe and Sivir in too many situations where she can abuse the range advantage quite as hard as you can in standard laning. Be interesting to see if Delta Fox elects to go into the 1-3-1, putting Corki in the side lane. He is pretty happy there, and it does put the Azir under more control where he can't do this, where he's just free pushing the turret basically alone. It's interesting to see he didn't throw out a Spiderling after that cocoon. He did not care about. No, maybe it was down after clearing the wolves.
He's got to be conservative with his tokens. Oh.
The volatile Spiderling isn't a token, it's like a spell.
It's a spell?
It's a spell, yeah.
So that's like his fireball that he uses to clear out other tokens?
That was Lightning Bolt. He didn't cast it, I don't know.
Maybe it was overloaded.
Yeah, okay.
So now that Shinon has gotten that extra gold bonus, though, he's been able to complete his Essence Reaver, which means that his wave clear potential has shot up a lot, because now he's going to be getting some mana back whenever he critically strikes. Ashe is going to have that mechanic, of course, to basically get a critical strike whenever she hits something. So the wave clear has now been moved over to the mid lane between Ashe and Corki. They could be potentially pressuring down. It does actually look like they're rotating the dual lane all the way up top. That tower did take a little bit of damage when Corki and Shen were unfortunately diving it earlier. But we'll have to see now, where does the map play go? Because Delta Fox is the first one to take a tower. They're the first ones to open up the map for this map movement.
Right, and Team Gates actually were kind of the ones to initiate it a little bit. They had rotated up there preemptively, probably hoping to call the Delta Fox move to the top side. And, I mean, they got it right, but now they're in that situation like we were talking about where they do have that item advantage, allowing them to continue abusing the range advantage as well. And they're going to bring, once again, Grigney up to the top side of the map. Probably do some more 3v3 laning, just sit in lane and poke that turret down. There's not too much they can do about it.
Well, Team Gates in general just kind of wants to have the lane phase go on. They did lose the tower on the bottom side, and you figured it would end at that point, but it looks like they're just content to farm up on the Sivir, farm up on the Azir. They know they have some scaling advantages, but if they're going to be walking forward like this, Trombus looks like he might get caught out of position, does have to flash and uses the Emperor's Divide, the jump away from Kha'Zix as well, though, but now he's stuck on the opposing side of the map, and he's going to get shut down.
Yeah, you see the chain CC come in there. There is a lot of it available to Delta Fox, the root, the taunt, the arrow, cocoon, a lot of single target or line skill shots available to them. Able to pick up the Kha'Zix there, and Shen showing the advantages of having double globals essentially with his ultimate, is able to make that play and teleport down the boss side of the map to cover the turret from the pushing Maokai.
And he's actually picked up a Tiamat as well, so potentially going to be building into the Titanic Hydra style of Shen. That's going to up his split pushing potential. It's also going to up his dueling potential against the Maokai, who at this point in time finished some Merc Treads, has a Spear, Spectre's Cal of his own, but doesn't really have any armor so to speak of right now. So that Shen trading with a couple of auto attacks, you mentioned how much his Q can chunk, and it's going to hurt that Maokai.
Yeah, but on the flip side, I believe it's mostly magic damage as well as the fact that Corki does a lot and the Elise. So I think overall it's a pretty good purchase so far, though he does need to pick up armor eventually because the Ashe is relatively strong and she does a good bit of damage to tanks.
Well, the second Drake on the map has been an Infernal Dragon, so that one is going to be taken by Delta Fox. Now,
oh boy.
Yeah, that's two Infernal Dragons on their side. It's going to keep upping the damage, and it might not be a little bit fair. Echo Fox in the Scouting Grounds. They picked up Shinon, who was a Scouting Grounds player. He was on Team Mountain Drake, but the Echo Fox team was Team Infernal, and it's showing up today.
I mean, you get 3K gold lead, two Infernal Drakes. That can get out of hand really quickly. We saw in the LCS, I think it was the Team Liquid FlyQuest series, that FlyQuest was able to grab 3 Infernal Drakes with a Corki, and the amount of damage that High was doing with his rockets was pretty insane. So you got to be careful after this because a lot of the members of Team Gates do not deal well with poke. Azir, that's one of the things that he's always struggled with the most. A lot of his worst matchups are poke-heavy champions like the Corki, like a Xerath and things like that. And Sivir, notoriously low range. Her spell shield only blocks one ability. You keep shooting those rockets out, she'll be forced off the turret defenses. So this could get hairy very quickly for Team Gates.
Well, there may not be a third Infernal Drake quite yet. The next one to spawn on the map is going to be a Cloud Drake. But as you mentioned, this could potentially be scary for Team Gates. Delta Fox with a lot of their poke on their side. We're coming up on about the 17-minute mark. Around 20 minutes when you start really completing those item power spikes. Even just right now, Corki's already picked up the Trinity Force. We mentioned the Essence Reaver being picked up for Ashe. The jungle item has been complete for Elise. There's a lot of potential poke damage that could come out from this side if they so choose to start sieging towers.
You get to see one of the benefits of the red sweeper there. You think you're just going for Scuttle Crab, and then it's like, warning, hazard in the brush, run. a panic Valkyrie away as soon as he realized that.
It's like that new challenger approaches Flash. That
Yeah, but I didn't run away from them. I stood my ground.
and you beat him up.
No,
You got beat up.
no, I never unlocked the character.
Oh wow, unlucky. It's a little sad. Sorry.
I'm not gonna talk about this right now, Tom. I'm still a little upset about it. Coming up on 17 and a half minutes, basically. Gold lead hasn't grown too much since we last talked about it, and I'm surprised that they haven't made a more coordinated play around the top side of the turret, top side of the map. The Ash arrow is extremely easy to use. The Elise is great for diving, same with the Shen. I would expect them to be trying to target that, given that it's one of the easiest objectives available for them to go through, but I think they're kind of happy playing it slow as well.
Yeah, come to think of it, I don't think I've seen an Ash arrow that's been used extremely proactively yet. I mean, we had an explosive early game where there were 3 kills that happened, but since then, it's only been a couple more kills since that, 3 more, as we're now moving towards the 18-minute mark of this game. Both of these teams seem content to extend that laning phase. We mentioned already, Team Gates has some scaling on their side. They're perfectly okay with doing this. Delta Fox on their side, their potential poke window, they want to capitalize on that, but right now it seems like that they're just not comfortable doing so.
Right, I mean, Delta Fox, it's hard to say they get outscaled, though Azir and Sivir are two of the better scaling champions in the game. Ashe is great as well, and Corki's no slouch, though you would never really call him a hyperscaler. But I mean, I think Delta Fox is fine playing this game a little bit slower. They do have a pretty large advantage already. If they don't feel comfortable forcing a dive, I'd rather not send them flub one and throw the game back into Team Gates' favor. And according to the last game, you know, they had the advantage for a long time before they started making those kind of mistakes, so they might be a little gun-shy this game.
Well, it looks like they are going to wind up sending Greeny up towards this top lane. Slow but steady is going to wind up winning this turret push as they are able to whittle that one down after moving up there early on. And I'm really interested to see where... I keep going back to map movements for Delta Fox, and it's because if you look at these lineups, it's an entire lineup of rookies for Team Gates. We mentioned that when we were introducing the game number 2. Any of the competitive experience is on the side of Delta Fox. Brandini played a couple of games for Phoenix 1. Grigney subbed in for the main Echo Fox roster, and Baby played multiple splits on the main roster. So I'm looking at their team to be the one that is a little bit more experienced in that, and I'm looking on to try to set the pace of this game and make Team Gates react to it.
Ready for some flame, Tom?
I'm ready for some flame.
It is Echo Fox. It was their LCS experience. They were not renowned for their shot calling, but it is a challenger scene. And generally, whenever you find yourself at a mechanical and individual advantage, which it does seem like Delta Fox has a little bit of one, it does make shot calling a little bit easier generally because you're just more, you have more of a window to act on things because teams aren't so quick about punishing you on whatever mistakes you make.
And actually, you bring up a really good point. This is an Echo Fox challenger team, so potentially the slow and steady wins the race could be exactly what they're going for. But at this point, the cleanse have been picked up there by Strumpus, but they're still able to trade that Ash Arrow for a mid lane tower.
Yeah, and getting all 3 outer turrets before, or right around 20 minutes is totally fine. You don't have to blow the game wide open. I think in the LCK, I saw the stat that the first turret drops around 15 minutes, which is a lot slower than you might initially think. But I mean, that's the case where the game has slowed down a little bit. There's no more crazy turret trading with 2v1s and stuff like that. And overall, it is harder to force around the bot lane and things like that, which is usually the first turret to drop because there aren't as many lane dominant champions. It's harder to get that advantage in lane.
And you haven't actually seen a lot of the multiple teleport fiestas in the bottom lane, for the lack of a better word. There hasn't really been a lot of those teleport plays in the bottom lane where somebody shoves up a little too far and they don't realize there's a ward behind them and everybody kind of groups down there. You may have expected that with a double Infernal Drake in this one, but both of these teams seem to be a little bit more, to borrow a term from the scouting grounds, calculated with their aggression.
Right, and then it is the kind of thing where once you get these first outer turrets down, moving on to the inner turrets does take a little bit of time. You need to set things up. You got to go in and get the deep vision, coordinate with your team, make sure that it's safe to push onto the other side of the map, and it's too soon to go for any other objectives, really. I mean, the Dragon's coming back up. Being that it is a Cloud Drake, I doubt Team Gates will contest it too hard. And then from there, there's going to be a bit of a downtime until they can start threatening very heavily around Baron. Unless they can manage to hit an Ash Arrow on something and force a fight.
Well, they do have the potential. If they want to pull the trigger, the availability is there. If not, last game, it was a 40-something minute long game. They took multiple dragons from the side of Delta Fox, and if they wound up winning that game, it got a little bit closer potentially than would have liked. But if that game plan is the way they want to wind up playing it out, it's no surprise to see them go for that Cloud Drake, take that easy advantage. Now they have the movement speed. They could wait for an Ash Arrow to unfortunately miss. They could wait for them to be shoved out and then slowly but surely inch forward, put pressure down on the map, and ward up the enemy side of the jungle.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate that went wide. Being able to even just force the flash like we were talking about, getting those kind of mini objectives that summoners can end up being is very useful because it sets you up for the next one. Here we see the TP come in from Alarin, but it looks like it's not going to be able to get much done.
Yeah, the ward was in a place where they didn't necessarily see it all too much, but they were able to react to it very, very quickly because there's still a decent amount of distance. They tried to kind of get a pincer move on the 4 kind of goofed up members here of Delta Fox, but it did not pan out for the side of Team Gates. And now that's going to be a pretty key as well, because that's your teleport down, and you're against a Shen who has both his teleport and Stand United.
Right, so you can expect Delta Fox to start trying to force, hopefully, pretty heavily around the flip side of the map, wherever Shen is not. And here it looks like they're just getting some deep vision on the top side. Not too much action going on quite yet. Azir did hit his most important 2 items, though, of the Nashor's Tooth and Rylai's. Both those items have been tweaked a little bit since, you know, Azir was in his prime, as well as the champion itself. But overall, once he gets those 2 items, that's when he really starts getting unlocked and being able to really, really control zones in team fights.
And then the Azir is online. You had the Essence Reaver picked up for Sivir. She's actually been sitting up in that top lane farming for a little bit. Probably has a decent amount of change in her pocket. On the flip side, her lane counterpart, the Ashe, has gone for her upgraded Zeal item, Renowned Hurricane. The Essence Reaver picked up for her as well. And it looks like that in the mid lane, instead of going for that Gunblade build, Corki's opting potentially build into an Infinity Edge.
Right, it's one of those less dueling, burst-heavy builds in terms of once you finally get in range of things, but definitely more of a poke focus as well as auto attack. It's a really strong build. I personally like the Gunblade one more. There's a lot of champions in the current meta that like going in and having that extra utility and damage from that active is pretty nice. Just on the side of Team Gates, you're almost always going to be able to get that off versus the Maokai or the Kazakhs. So, I mean, it really is kind of a preference. And given that they're winning the game, but they play slow, maybe he is thinking more late game centric by going for the more Infinity Edge focused build. So it's interesting to see what the itemization choices available to players.
It's just a lot more raw damage, which means that his spells are going to deal more too.
Right, that's what I was saying. It helps with the poke a lot more. Gunblade having the hybrid stats does help as well, because obviously the crit's not going to matter too much, but it does lead to a lot higher DPS, I think, with the crits coming in just from your auto attacks.
And with the slower pace that Delta Fox is kind of taking this game, I mean, we're saying that it is going a little bit slowly, but they still are just gaining advantage. It's 42.3k to now 37k, so they have a gold advantage, and it is slowly increasing. They've taken the outer ring of towers. They're not exactly super fast on establishing.
On the Baron.
Oh, that is. Are they actually starting the Baron play?
I believe so. I saw the package go out on it. It looks like they're going to be forcing it down. They turn off to start a fight against Team Gates.
Well, this is what they did at the end last game, and Shannon's already going on picking off the jungler here as he winds up picking up the odd orange. He will fall down to Azir, but on the backside, Malzahar has fallen to Corki, so one marksman is down, but the other one's able to clean up a little bit of the duties there. And now with Kazakhs down, are they going to turn back?
It's going to be a little hard without the Ashe, though you do basically have another AD carry in Corki available to deal damage, as well as the fact that Zyra and Elise are 2 of the best damage-dealing champions in those positions for dealing with neutral objectives, though it doesn't look like Team Gates is going to give it up that easily.
No, Baby's already been locked up. There's no Stranglethorns available either. They are going to wind up forcing Delta Fox off, but Alorum is taking a lot of damage in the front line. The back line of Delta Fox, though, is extremely low, and there's 2 going down already. Corki and Elise are gone. The Maokai falls, but it's basically just Shen against the world at this point. Everybody else from Delta Fox either died or pieced out of there, and Team Gates, they're able to take the counter turn. Brandini tried to channel the teleport to get out, but Vex found him. He's going to try to block as many auto attacks as possible. He goes down and uses the teleport.
There you see the power of Team Gates backline. Maokai went in, did a great job frontlining for his team, allowing both Azir and Sivir to deal a ton of damage over the course of the fight, and now Team Gates looks like they're going to try and use that team fight win to get their own Baron.
Well, you were saying without the Ashe, you didn't know if there was enough damage to really go for that Baron, and there wasn't enough to win that fight either. Odd Orange taking it up, though. Without the Maokai available, there's not a lot of damage-soaking ability over here. The Channel Crystal Arrow goes out. Shineal's not able to steal that with a volley, and Team Gates gonna take a Baron.
Coming back yet again into the game off the back of a Baron force from Delta Fox, and it looks like a good play initially. They get the turn off, a really good ultimate by Baby, followed up by the ultimate from Ashe, and they're able to take a lot of damage. Almost interrupts that Shen ultimate, not quite able to do so. And overall, it's a nice force out of Delta Fox, but I have to wonder about the decision to start the Baron off again. You can basically reset this situation and try and do it again now that there are a number of summoners out. It's a lot easier to force that Baron play once you already get it a semi-successful one the first time because they can't flash your ults anymore. The Asher was a much stronger turn-off tool, and the fact that they felt like they need to force it right away again, it's not something I'm sure I agree with.
Yeah, it's a very strange kind of acceleration to the pace of the game. We were talking about they were taking it slow, they had incremental advantages, and they just kind of go for the Baron. They take a fight, and you expect them to kind of back off and continue to slowly push towers, but they immediately turn back on. It was like 0 to 60 in the course of one kill.
0 to 100 real quick.
Really, really fast. And unfortunately for Delta Fox, it backfires on them, and Team Gates are now able to get this Baron, and that's going to start closing this gold gap because there's still a ton of towers for them to take. They've ended up at 3 apiece right now.
We talked about how Team Gates had opted to go for a really strong standard team comp. The Azir and Sivir both being slightly out of meta, but the fact that they've gotten off the ground now, basically 3-0-1 for Azir, 0-0-3 for Sivir. They're hitting their core items, and I mean, they're not champions that slow down after 2 or 3 items. They keep getting stronger and stronger.
Now, this may be game number 2, and we may have just gotten a brief recap of game 1 and kind of saw the end of that, but if I recall correctly, it started with Echo Fox had dominating lane phase, Echo Fox took earlier towers, sorry, Delta Fox took earlier towers, 1 letter off. Delta Fox was able to take multiple dragons. They lost the Baron fight. They lost the dragon. Then we joined in and the gold counts evened up. We're a little bit earlier than we were last game, but history is very strangely repeating itself this time around.
Right, and I think the thing you want to see out of Team Gates this time is the fact that they don't make those late game mistakes where they ended up losing that Elder Dragon fight. Now, obviously, like you said, much earlier into the game, and they did basically manage to even the gold up relatively close with this Baron buff. And it's really about how they play out from here, because it's not like they took control back from the game. It's not like they can go and force their will all over Delta Fox. You're going to see a lot more of these kinds of neutral objective plays where one team's going to be going for vision, they're going to try and catch somebody out. Shenda has the double TP advantage, and it's going to be about playing around all those different factors.
Right, and this is kind of the, as you mentioned in one of our ULOL casts, every time you get a Baron, it doesn't have to be a proactive Baron. Sometimes you need it to recover because you've been gifted a Baron or you're able to steal a Baron, and you still need to kind of recover that gold difference or just that map pressure. And this is what Team Gates is doing. They've been able to close that almost 6,000 gold lead, now pressing it down to a 2,000 gold advantage, where as we get later and later in the game, it's not going to really start to matter, and that gold advantage you'll be able to get back is going to start transferring into some items. Spirit Visage, Banshee's Veil, Sunfire Cape, your Maokai is going to be a really, really ridiculous tank to deal with. And that Azir, who just not that long ago hit that 2-item power spike, has now got an Abyssal Scepter and a needlessly large rod on top of all those items.
Right, so I'm sure Sivir's getting closer to Infinity Edge. Once she starts getting those ricochet crits, she starts getting a little crazy. And that's one of the things that really makes her team fighting so strong, is the fact that she doesn't even need to really hit your back line. She can auto your front line and have it bounce all the way back and start dealing damage to your entire team. So overall, I think Team Gates is in a really strong spot. It's just about having to play out those neutral situations from here. And I'm a little concerned about how they work around vision control. It looks like they struggle in terms of getting everyone on the same page and going in for vision and dropping them in the right places and all that. So I want to see them do it. I've seen a little bit more out of Delta Fox that I like, but both teams obviously struggling a little bit in the mid-late game.
Well, as we mentioned in Champion Select too, Team Gate, more of a standard kind of team composition. They also have more of a team composition that can team fight in this game. Delta Fox last game had the Katarina, so in team fights you always had to be aware of where's the Katarina, where's the resets going to come from. We have to protect our backline before she winds up jumping in there. You don't have to really worry about that with a Corki, so they do have a slight team fight advantage, and they do have a little bit of an easier composition to kind of work around in doing so. You have a lot of R buttons that do a lot of things and get you into the enemy team.
And it is a little scary when you start going in on Delta Fox. Zyra, as the game goes later and later, she already has her Leandry. She's going to be working towards a Rylai's next, most likely. It is a champion that does a lot of damage to short-range champions that want to run in against her, Sivir being one of those,
right.
Maokai and Kha'Zix also being short-range. So it is a little bit scary for Team Gate, but they do have a lot of options. Like I said, you can just hit the Shen if you really want to. That's probably fine. The Ricochet will take care of the back line. And Maokai, generally a stronger tank in the late game than Shen, just in terms of lockdown potential and the fact that his ultimate gives him a ton of tankiness to everything.
Well, since the Baron buff has fallen out, we've seen Delta Fox be able to really just start stacking up these minion waves again. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow did once again find its mark on Strompus, so that's burned the cleanse from him once again. Shadow's arrows, while they haven't been super plentiful this game, have been hitting very key targets.
Right, and I think one of the things that we haven't highlighted is the fact that Delta Fox still has 2 Infernal Drakes.
Right.
So even though the gold lead is much closer, that's another couple thousand gold worth of stats that their team has in their favor that is basically unrecoverable from Team Gates. There's no way you can catch back up to the Infernal Drakes anymore.
And that's transferring over very, very potently now that Ashe has picked up the Infinity Edge as well. So now we talked about the Sivir Infinity Edge critical strikes going to be very, very potent. The Ashe poke with the Infinity Edge with the double Infernal Drake also going to be very hard to deal with.
Yep, and another thing that's hard to deal with is the Shen. It seems like Alarim's been taking the worst end of trades. Shen is continuing to get pressure in this matchup. And the annoying thing is not that like Shen's going to take the turret in front of the Maokai, but just that he has double the teleport. So you expect the first one to go in, and you know they trade, maybe you back off the Baron Force or whatever, but then once you reset, you have such a huge advantage because Shen can keep pushing in and then back off and make the TP play yet again.
Yeah, and we saw that kind of illustrated in the last team fight. Even though it was a Baron fight, that Team Gates wound up winning. Alarim had to flash Twisted Advance to even try to stop Brandini from getting into the fight. Didn't work out, and Brandini was able to get into that fight, but did work out in favor of Team Gates. So we'll have to see how that kind of just, we glanced it off like at the beginning as these two tanks kind of slapping against each other. Yeah, there was a lot of action early on, but that's just going to be a recurring kind of theme that happens in this game. But as you mentioned, it's going to be more and more difficult for Alarim to really make an impact felt on the map, which means that now that the Azir has a lot of items, now that the Sivir is going to be providing a lot of damage, you really have to, when you actually wind up pushing that go button, make it count. Otherwise, you're going to be on a long pause time.
Right. Right you are, Tom. 33.5 minutes into the game, Baron is back up. This is going to be the big focus for both teams, and seeing that Delta Fox seems to have the map advantage, they're going to be the ones going in first to secure vision on it and trying to force Team Gates into an unfavorable situation.
And the ward control from Delta Fox this entire game has been pretty solid. We mentioned earlier the fact that they were able to make a play on the bottom side for the first Infernal Drake because they were warding up the enemy blue side, but they've been able to establish Baron vision earlier on, which resulted in one of those first pickoffs, although they weren't able to secure that Baron. Their vision control all in all has been extremely good up until now, because now they have no idea this Ocean Drake is going on. Otherwise, we'd see them rushing straight for that Baron.
Right, it really is kind of sad to not have any idea of this happening. The fact that Maokai's not in lane pushing anymore, you haven't seen the Kazakhs. Maybe hints to them that they should be focusing more on the top side of the map, but they haven't started it. They aren't forcing it down. They're just clearing wards out that already existed there. And ultimately, that's going to be a free Ocean Drake on the side of Team Gates, picking up their second one, giving them even more regen.
And we mentioned earlier that the later game Ocean Drakes may not potentially be the best, but against the composition like the side of Delta Fox, you said Azir struggles against poke. Sivir gets poked down a lot. When you have double Ocean Drakes, you're getting poked down, you just step back and start regenning up. You're able to keep those team fights going. And well, now speaking of vision control, they've cleared out the vision from the side of Team Gates, so they're starting this Baron. They kind of know what's going on. It's being a duo here by Grigney and Damonte. Now that the Alarim is joined in, oh, Grigney flashes into the wall! Oh no, he is able to secure the Baron for the rest of his team, but that's going to be him going down.
That was a bit of an interesting play. I'm not sure I agree with exactly how that was executed, but ultimately you can't say it doesn't pay off. They pick up the Baron, only losing their jungler in return. They just have to hold on for another 40-ish seconds and hopefully only lose a turret. And from there, I think you have to say it's overall it's a worthwhile play.
Yeah, I don't know whether to be super excited about that as Delta Fox or a little bit kind of shaken off by it, because you lose your jungler, so now you're getting pushed on here, but you do secure the Baron buff, which is something really needed to try to break those second-tier towers.
Right, and I think that especially the part that makes you arch your eyebrow a little bit is the execution of it as we take another look here. Like we said, good plan to just go over the wall and do it. I think they could have, if they really wanted to, bring more people in even with the blast cone. They choose not to, just going for the two-man. And package kind of giving it away that they're probably over there. Maokai TP's in, goes over to start it, and then very interesting flash by Grigney, pretty unneeded, but he is able to secure with the smite, the most important thing, and then Corki is able to get the flash Valkyrie out as well. So, like I said, even though you might say, oh, they could have done a couple things better there, it's hard to say the result wasn't worth it.
Yeah, that's true. So now they have themselves a Baron buff, and that's going to aid them in their quest to break down these inner Tier 2 towers from the side of Team Gates. We talked about Delta Fox potentially not having the quicker reactions despite having solid warding up until when that Ocean Drake was going down. Maybe they heard us. Highly doubt that, but because they can't. But they actually wound up going for that Baron play. But the reaction from Team Gates to know that, hey, these guys are gone. Hey, the package is here. Where could they be? The teleportation without having the actual vision on it was very, very good reaction to Team Gates. Just not quick enough to really contest it. The jungler was not on that side.
And especially given the fact that Delta Fox basically tried that trick earlier in the game. They tried to go for a sneak, but it was spotted out. Once again, go for the sneak, spotted out. But this time actually successful, able to grab the Baron. And Shen is thrilled to have it, though he hasn't really been abusing his global advantage as hard as they could. They haven't forced like double the plays, which is usually what you try and see with the Shen playing this really fast-paced game.
Well, with the Shen you mentioned, now that he's already kind of had a slight advantage over the Maokai in this slow but sure whittling down of the tank's push and pull, now that he has the Baron buff on him as well, Maokai's not going to be as effective at clearing those minions out. They're going to be a little bit stronger against the magic damage he's pulling out, plus he's going to have that extra little bit of minion damage when they wind up taunting in and going for these trade situations. So the Shen having a little bit more priority in this lane push, but now it's on the other 4 members of Delta Fox. What are they going to do? You mentioned Corki doesn't have the duelist build, but is still a decent split pusher. It happened in last game, and he's been able to take down the outer tower.
Right, but I want to see a little bit more out of Delta Fox. They have such an advantage here. I wouldn't mind seeing them actually force pretty hard, but if Gates isn't willing to put up to the strongest fight, then I guess you're pretty happy just grabbing these inner turrets.
Yeah, so it looks like they are going to be using that Baron buff to their advantage, and they're able to take the 2 of the 3 inner tier 2 towers, and that means that the only thing they have left to do is join up Shen, who's prepped a wave. He's got the tower already down to below half HP. All 3 of those towers are going to go down off the back of 1 Baron buff.
And with the back of that Baron buff, they're able to grab almost a 7,000 gold lead now, previously hovering around 1 or 2. So very, very successful Baron out of Team Delta Fox. But still, the game is going to require one more big thing in their favor. They need another Baron to crack the base, maybe another team fight. They're one big play away from hopefully taking this game back and getting to 2-0.
Well, it cost them the Elise Flash and the Elise Death in order to get the Baron that secured them the inner towers of the base. But as you did say, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. We're cresting into the almost 40-minute mark right now, so those big gold advantages that they wind up having are going to wind up meaning slightly less and less as these champions start completing their full builds. We see both of the marksmen on the side of Delta Fox slowly kind of approaching that point. The last things that really have to do is just upgrade those Hexdringers into Mauls of the Malmortius. They're going to wind up being on full build. Azir has a needlessly large rod in his inventory, which will be turned into one of many different powerful items. Wouldn't be surprised to see a death cap just for the raw amount of damage coming out from that. And Sivir at the same time has a Doran's blade in her inventory she can sell, but we're starting to get to that point where the tanks are as tanky as they can get. The damage dealers will be dealing as much damage as they can get, and it really just comes down to what could potentially be an Elder Dragon fight.
Right, and I think Team Gates, though, they do have the scaling advantage. You get into that situation where you just can't keep conceding things. So if you lose the next Baron buff, you might not even get a team fight. They might just split up and do that 1-3-1 that got them all the inner turrets, again, to grab some of the base inhib turrets and start taking inhibs. And then once that's down, it's very hard to keep holding onto your base, despite the fact that you have excellent scaling and wave clear.
Well, with Elder Dragon spawning in just 30 seconds, you can only imagine that both of these teams are going to have all their eyes prepped on that. So whether it's a 1-3-1 situation from Delta Fox, or whether it's them continuing to press in as a group and try to get some of those more forward wards that they've been able to get for a large majority of the game, although they may not see that somebody is behind them currently, they are going to continue to just move as a pack, however. Although, I don't really know. I think it's more of well, it's a lone wolf. I don't know if foxes move in packs, but
I'm not an animal expert.
No.
You're asking the wrong guy. I only know League of Legends, and I know that this is an Elder Drake going down in favor of Team Delta Fox. It doesn't look like Team Gates is really in range to do anything about it. That's another neutral objective going in their favor. And like I said, you can give up a little bit, but you're starting to give up too much now. And if they're able to transition this into a fight or anything like that, then with the triple Drakes in their favor, the Elder Drake does a ton of damage.
yeah, and they've gotten 2 of those Infernal Drakes as well. So while we mentioned the double Ocean Drake is good to survive a lot of the poke Delta Fox has normally, when you're surviving poke from a doubly strong Infernal Drake poke team that has the Elder Dragon burn on top of it, we saw the Elder Dragon be the reason the game ended last time.
Right, it was a fight around there that really opened up that game, that ended it for them. Here, Team Delta Fox has just gotten their reset off. Like we said before, Elder Dragon does not have the longest lasting buff. You do need to be aggressive with it if you really want to get a lot off of it. And so Delta Fox are going to have to find a way to actually force a team fight here because they've been struggling to do it, honestly, for most of the game, despite having a lot of tools to do so. It's one of those situations where because you're not forcing, all the summoners are still up, so it's harder to force. The fact it's also that Team Gate is not playing particularly aggressive. We saw once they got that Baron buff, Team Gate really didn't defend their inner turrets. They were able to grab all those pretty easily on the side of Delta Fox.
Well, thankfully for Delta Fox, the fight may wind up coming to them as much it did in game number 1. Baron is going to be on the map in about 10 seconds. Brandini is going to be split pushing away in the bottom lane, has himself a ZZ Rot portal as well, so those little Void minions will be helping push him in. More tokens, if you will, to push down on that bottom side. But now, with this Baron spawning, once again, it's on Team Gates. Do you just give this up? You have no idea they're taking it. You could assume because you know it's spawning at this point in time. But if you give this up, are you going to be able to defend?
Nope. Probably not, and they're going to give it up for free as well. The fact that they have not been able to secure a very good vision at any point in the game is very scary. And you see here, Brandini is perfectly happy taking up the whole team. Maybe not perfectly happy. He's probably going to go down here.
Yeah, he will wind up going down eventually, but that is 5 members from the side of Team Gates that are needed in order to do that. That does mean, however, it's about a minute death timer onto Brandini. So that means that the Elder Dragon buff is going to fade away. The Baron buff will still be available, but it's a lot of pressure seated on the map with the Shen gone.
Yeah, you have to think that really wasn't worth it. The Azir had shown pretty early on there that he was there to stop the Shen push rather than stop the Baron attempt. And once you get the Baron, Brandon just really needs to back off and play with the buff and his team after that. Now, Delta Fox are playing a little bit with fire here, down 4v5, though the Team Gates don't have any vision really to set up a good flank to get the Maokai onto somebody. So it might be a little hard to get the fight that they need to turn this game around.
Nope, Odd Orange doing his Kha'Zix job, sitting in a brush off to the side, looking and waiting to try to catch somebody as they're trying to put warding down from the side of Delta Fox. But with the Baron buff on them and everybody in the middle lane, they don't necessarily need to worry all too much about what's going to be coming from the side of them because all of their targets that they need to finish this game are directly in front of them. They do have a little bit of warding down already, so they will see when Odd Orange tries to go around and very wisely just back away.
Right, and Shen is back up now with his global abilities available, so if they really did try and force now, it's too late. He is going to be there to cover his team as we see him actually just TPing down the bot lane, wanting to get the most out of this Baron buff. I think this is actually a pretty good call. You have your ultimate if you want need to join up with your team if they get forced on, and you just don't want to waste any more of this Baron and keep giving Team Gates time to get more and more items.
And while we saw Shen teleporting to the bot lane, we saw Vex with a very low HP bar having to go back to the base and just heal up. That's the constant poke potential. That's the constant poking and prodding from the Ash Volley, the Corki Rockets, the Elise Spiderlings, or the Volatile Spiderlings coming in, continuously forcing back and forth. And while they're able to defend up the mid lane from the side of Team Gates, now that the fact that Delta Fox is able to push up the bottom lane with Shen, they can bounce between these other 2 lanes and just consistently push and pull Team Gates apart. Eventually, they're going to have to cede a tower or have to try to force something.
I mean, Delta Fox hasn't gotten a ton done with their Baron so far. It's well over halfway done. There's probably only a couple more minion waves available to use it for, and none of these turrets are particularly low yet, so this could be another instance of the Baron buff not actually helping the team out that much, though they are able to force this one down.
Yeah, the Enchanted Crystal actually wind up getting used. I believe it wound up hitting the Malzahar shield. That one get popped, but now they're going to use the Nethergrass on the Demonte. He's just going to Corki Valkyrie away. Vincent gets chunked out there. Baby winds up picking up the kill off of the Stranglethorns. The Malzahar tried to lock somebody down, but he gets shut down.
Right, and you saw that they actually were able to force Ashe to get very, very low there, and it would have been great if they were actually able to force that fight, but the Malzahar goes in, the rest of the team not able to follow up at all with any damage, and there's no wards for Alwyn to get a TP flank off, and it's one of the situations where it didn't seem like they were really prepared for that push on the top side. They didn't get any vision down earlier to go and get a flank off, and great play by Team Delta Fox able to secure that top inhib just as their Baron buff was ticking out.
So they're actually able to get something off of that Baron, and they're able to utilize it by kind of pushing and pulling Team Gates. Once the Shen kind of came up and he had that presence on the bottom lane, it was up to Team Gates to react to one or the other. And as you mentioned, they weren't set up on the top side like they were in the mid lane, so they weren't really able to respond to it absolutely properly. Delta Fox is able to take a top lane where now super minions will be pushing down. They've established a little bit of pressure on that bottom lane. They were able to chunk the tower down fairly low. They haven't not yet been able to take it, and unfortunately for the side of Team Gates, Azir Towers, well, won't be providing the same kind of coverage that regular towers will.
No, Azir Tower is not quite as strong. Still useful.
They hurt, but they can't prevent your Nexus from falling like regular towers.
Right, and I mean, they're much more effective on offense when you're able to basically set up a base outside the opponent's base. On defense, they're basically just a tiny little roadblock that's going to get ran over by the next minion wave. But, I mean, you got the ability, may as well use it.
Well, we also have Corki picking up his package, so his passive is available. Want to see if he just uses it for mobility to continue clearing out wards on the bottom side of this jungle, or if Delta Fox is going to try to use it to zone somebody away, potentially pushing towards a tower. Now the side of Team Gates, they're trying to push out that top lane. They know that eventually super minions will push down, and they'll have to deal with it when it winds up hitting towards their Nexus tower, but they still have to worry about this 4-1 split coming out from the side of Delta Fox, who slowly but surely are whittling away some of these towers, and when that poke damage lands, it hurts.
Yeah, you see Kha'Zix dropped almost instantly to half health. He also has the burn there from the Leandry's Torment, going that kind of hybrid pen build. Not the best against tanks, but ultimately going to be pretty effective against squishies like we just saw there. And the poke damage is getting stuff done. This turret's been dropped down to about half, and the super creep wave from the top side is finally getting into the base. So Kha'Zix looks like he's able to clear it out. Gonna have a field goal there from
3 points. So much you get for a field goal.
Yeah, it's fine.
So that's the Enchanted Crystal Arrow down, though, so that means that there's no kind of go trigger from the side of Delta Fox, and they know now on the side of Team Gates that one of the primary ways for Delta Fox to actually engage into a tower dive is down. So as long as they're not walking into Zyro roots, there's not a lot from the side to catch them up besides maybe an Elise Cocoon.
Right, Delta Fox's diving capability is much lower without that. Poke is still there, but looks like Sivir and Azir are doing a good enough job holding out here. And you're getting to the point where, although Shen has done a good job poking this turret down, I think it would be pretty good to swap which your lane assignments are. Bring the 4-man core down here. You're basically about 2 auto attacks from Corki or Ash from taking this away.
And the problem is for Delta Fox is while they are continuously poking and pushing up waves, the wave clear coming out from Team Gates is now just at a point where it's insane, because you have the Azir who can chunk out Zyra just as well as minions, and they're actually going to pull the trigger. They wind up using the Sivir ultimate. They're just going to charge in. They take down Baby. Vincent on the backside has been dropped extremely low as Damonte's going to wind up picking up that kill. The Nethergrass is on him, but the Gatling gun was just going from Corki and able to wind up chunking down, so it's a support for support trade, and now that that has broken open, that means that nobody's there to defend the bottom lane. They're going to go for the inhibitor, but Team Gates now, they have to try to respond. Are they going to try to fight them to force them off? The inhibitor's already fallen now. If they try to chase after this, they're going to have to commit to this fight.
It doesn't look like they're going to be able to. They're able to get their second inhibitor on the side of Delta Fox. They're going to hopefully be able to transition that up to a Baron now with 10 seconds left on that respawn. And it's going to be pretty hard for Team Gates to really do anything to contest this Baron, given that they're probably going to have to deal with a split pushing Shen with super creeps.
Well, Delta Fox, potentially a third Baron that will be taken in this game. The second one for them. The Elder Dragon, also coming up in a minute. Those have been the ways that they've been able to break into bases so far. And as we crest towards the 50-minute mark of this game, that may be the last thing that they absolutely need to wind up coming back into this one. But since it has gotten to this point in time, and they have already lost one of these Barons, if they wind up using this one or losing this one to Team Gates, it could wind up being their own kind of Achilles heel that comes back to bite.
Right, I mean, at this point, the damage is so high on both sides that anything can happen in a team fight. Someone mispositions, they can die instantly. The problem of Team Gates, of course, is actually getting into that team fight in an even situation. Right now, they are so behind in map pressure that, I mean, you see the Maokai desperately trying to clear that Z-Zerot portal, totally ignoring the Shen. And there we see Delta Fox starting off the Baron. Looks like they're going to be able to control it as Auto Orange is having a hard time getting in, though they are pulling off of it right now.
Yeah, they pull off of it as soon as they see the Auto Orange coming in. We see Brandini, however, has rotated up to that exposed inhibitor, so he's going to wind up taking that one down as Delta Fox is kind of just dancing around this Baron pit area, buying time for the Shen.
The Shen is going to be able to take down this inhibitor turret as we see, or inhibitor, excuse me, Delta Fox's arrow go wide yet again. And it looks like Team Gates is trying to collapse on the Brandini. Tapping a couple times, gets CC'd by the Maokai, gonna go down here.
He actually gets chain CC'd there. The Guardian Angel, actually no Guardian Angel, he's just one up going down in that one as the Malzahar dies, but it does secure Delta Fox the Baron. But now Team Gates, they might be looking to go for this Elder.
Well, they might be going for it. It's another one of those trades where Delta Fox loses Brandini, picks up the Baron. Brandini did also get the top inhibitor this time, so a better trade than last time, but It's not ultimately what Delta Fox wants. Shen with the Baron buff uses it extremely well against Maokai, who does mostly magic damage, and those creeps, of course, getting the buff that reduces the damage that they take. Would be great with Shen if he could use that. Ultimately, he's not going to have that buff again.
Well, last time this happened and they traded Shen for a Baron buff, he came back alive. They teleport down to the bot lane, and eventually Delta Fox was able to take down another inhibitor. This time around, they're going to be going for this Elder Dragon fight when Shen is not available, but they are going to wind up catching on to the odd orange. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow lands and winds up going on the Vincent. They chain the CC with the Elise Cocoon. Delta Fox has started this one up, but they don't have their primary tank. They don't have the Shen. They're going to collapse on those. Shinon is going to come in, wind up taking down Vex. It's going to be a Delta Fox Elder Dragon that they wind up taking. Team Gage is kind of unleashing that one for them.
Right, and it was a pretty crazy situation too, where the Zyra had almost sold out the Odd Orange by himself. Shortly after that, a couple Corki Rockets are able to drop a couple other members of Team Gates low as well, and we see that they just TP the Shen into the base. He's going to try and end the game by himself. Once again, not going to work, going to drop down. This time he has GA though, and his team is coming in to help.
So Shen winds up going down, he taunts himself all the way out. Now Alorum has been the target of the exhaust. Can Delta Fox with the Elder Dragon, with the Baron buff, finally take down Team Gates? They wind up taking down the Maokai, but he reassembles himself with that Guardian Angel. There's multiple super minions now wailing away on the Nexus towers. They got Baron buffs on top of them as well, and that tower will wind up going down. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow will actually hit Strumpus, prevents him from getting out of the base, and there's already way too many minions, and Delta Fox, slow and steady, takes the base, takes the series.
2-0. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty impressive early game out of them. They show that they are able to play around certain timings really well. The fact that they got that dragon off the blue buff timing, things like that. But they do seem to struggle a little bit the later the game goes. But, I mean, if you're not losing the game, you're probably winning it.
That's true. It did take a little bit of a while for Delta Fox to really get into a position where they felt comfortable kind of not even necessarily pulling the trigger. What they did kind of demonstrate was a not necessarily a mastery, but they have an aptitude for controlling waves. We saw that's how they wound up taking a bunch of the outer towers early on. It's how they took some of those inner towers, and they knew that they had really great vision control. They were able to take some, they lost the first one, but they were able to take a couple of Barons in that game. But there's just a couple of like tightening ups that they have to do in order to really make like what was a leaky kind of play that worked out for them, like airtight.
They really got to find their gas pedal, really. Just find ways that they can force plays down the enemy team's throat. I mean, we saw that in the previous series, there was some clear synergies that existed already for a couple of the teams, and they like to play around mid lane. Some people like having a pick comp. Quas is playing crazy stuff. Here, it didn't feel like the teams had a really clear identity of the things that they wanted to do in the game, and that's one of the things that you can really build upon is like once you know what works for your team, it's cleaning up what doesn't. Here, like I said, Delta Fox understands the game in terms of what's available to them, but don't seem to be able to force it on the enemy team.
Right. Their game plan wasn't necessarily to go into it with a solid plan of like, we have these champions, we know what we want to do. Like when we saw from the E United versus Tempo Storm series or the 1-3-1 or just the chain CC composition, their kind of strategy was we don't want to lose. And we saw both of those teams kind of falling into that kind of mindset where they were too afraid to make a mistake, but as soon as somebody did, eventually things happened.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. When you see the Shen pick, you can play it defensively where you're using its ultimate to keep people alive when the enemy team forces on you, but ultimately that's not the best way to use it. It's much more effective when you're actually forcing double the plays on the enemy team. So even if one goes, not great, only getting you 2 for 2, let's say, at least you can force it again and the enemy team can't match. So you need to keep up the action to get the most out of Shen, and that's clearly not something that Delta Fox is great at yet, and it makes the Shen pick a little weaker than it can be.
Yeah, and we saw kind of the delayed sort of poke composition coming out from them, whereas on the opposite side from Team Gates, they had a composition that could pull the trigger, but they fell behind early on. They weren't necessarily comfortable doing it. They did it later on in the game, and they were able to blow up Baby Zyra, but by that point, it had been about 50 minutes into the game, and they wound up trading kills just because everybody had full items.
I mean, we talk about the fact that Delta Fox isn't great about forcing plays. You can basically say the same thing about Team Gate. They just mostly held on. It was harder because they did have a losing bot lane. Their mid lane in Azir is not particularly strong in the meta right now. It's more of a control mage, but doesn't have kind of the brute force that some of the other ones do, like the Rise, like the Syndra that we've seen. And then the top side is tank versus tank. So it is hard to really force something to happen there, even though they did have the Kha'Zix pick. We saw that the Kha'Zix pick can get a lot done, but they didn't seem to have any idea of what they wanted to do with it.
Yeah, so you've heard our analysis on the situation, but now we're going to get an inside perspective on the game. So I'd like to welcome the AD carry of Delta Fox, Shinon, to the broadcast.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Hey there. So I really just had to kind of call you out for this because I was talking to you before the games and you had said that you were going to take this as a 2-0. I believe the terminology you used was easily, and that did not look very easy.
Yeah, that was definitely a rougher game than we expected. Usually we kind of just steamroll early game and then close out decisively, but we didn't get the early game snowball we were hoping to achieve, and we were kind of on the clock in that second game just because they had a better 5v5 comp and a late game Azir. So we just tried our best to utilize the split, and yeah, I'm just glad we were able to 2-0, even though it wasn't as decisive as I'd liked.
Yeah,
But
2-0's a 2-0. Got to be happy with it. Just got to look at what you can do better. Speaking of improvements, you guys scrim fairly regularly with your main LCS team, right? Or is that just something that I've heard?
Oh yeah, no. I would say they're definitely our most popular scrim partner.
And do you guys talk a lot as well in terms of trading ideas back and forth and giving advice to each other one-on-ones? Is it like a full-on sister team where you're getting a lot from each other, or is it more just like scrim partners?
I would say we're like slowly starting to get more from each other. As of right now, we're probably just like our main scrim partners, but we're slowly starting to like just like trade ideas. We talk about different matchups and we just test those out in scrims, and so it's pretty productive though. So.
Yeah, so you floated around the challenger scene for a little while. You came over to the scouting grounds. You were on Team Mountain Drake over there. So how has it really been kind of having just basically like all this experience around you as somebody who hasn't necessarily been on the LCS level yet?
It's I mean, it's all right. It's getting up to the LCS level is definitely a trying experience. I mean, you have to definitely work your way up there. You can't just like automatically, perform super well in solo queue, get a high ranking, and then just jump to LCS. So I've just been kind of taking like a steady route ever since scouting grounds, and so yeah, I'm in NACS now, of course, and I'm hoping to make it to LCS within the year actually. So
That's a good goal to have. Previously to this, we interviewed Gilius, and he said that he thought that Delta Fox was among some of the weaker teams in the NACS, excuse me. Do you think you have any words back for him? Are you looking forward to that matchup, being able to prove him wrong?
yeah, I definitely think United's a little overhyped. They have a pretty good roster on paper, but I don't know. I obviously like I don't think we can say anything because we had a really slow series. But yeah, I think honestly, what teams look like on paper doesn't really matter too much. I mean, it's the meta right now and how competitive is played out. It's just how well you can handle macro. So individual skill doesn't really matter too much, and so therefore, like I said, teams on paper don't really matter too much. So honestly, any team can take first, any team can take fifth or fourth or third. So
It's a very modest way to approach the trash talk that was thrown back and forth. But thank you very much for the interview, Shainan. Congratulations on the 2-0, and hopefully we see more from you in the Challenger Series.
yep, thank you.
All right, guys, so that's 2 series completed for tonight, but that means we have one more game to cover for you guys. Of course, we have Gold Coin United versus Big God Jackals, game number 2 coming up after a short break. So don't go anywhere. It's an advantage from Alorum. He trades back, does force the flash out of Maokai, but now stuck on the enemy side of the map. That's first blood.
Another gank coming in the top side. Flash stream connects onto Alorum. He's going to drop down.
He misses the taunt onto Alorum, though. Quick twisted advance isn't going to be enough to keep him alive. Corky Rocket does wind up getting blocked out, and Shen actually walks into tower range, and Auto Orange picks up another kill. Well, this is what they did at the end last game, and Shannon's already going and picking off the jungler here as he winds up picking up the Auto Orange. The backline of Delta Fox, though, is extremely low, and there's 2 going down already. Corky and Elise are gone. The Maokai falls, but it's basically just Shen against the world at this point. Brandini tried to channel the teleport to get out, but Vex found him. He's going to try to block as many auto attacks as possible. He goes down and uses the teleport. Now that the Alorum is joined in, oh great, he flashes into the wall. Oh no, he is able to secure the Baron for the rest of his team, but that's going to be him going down.